All right, how am I going to do today's update? So this week in the aquarium gallery has not only been a tremendously busy week and we accomplished a whole lot, but we also did 4 videos this week. So in today's update, I thought I'd bring you up to speed with what each video was about, what I did, and what happened next, followed by anything I haven't shown you yet, as well as what's to come. One of the things we did last Sunday was talk about how the plumbing and running water was almost completed, and today it actually is. We now have running water, as well as the hot water tank heated up. The way this works is simple. Water lines are coming up through the floor here. As you can see, there's a little shutoff valve back there, so I can shut the water off here as well as in the house if need be. The drains come through the wall here and connect to the little laundry sink here, and we have a vent tube here as well. The cold water line is split between the hot water tank as well as the tub, so I can have cold water as well as hot water. An interesting thing here is there's also a T with a valve installed. This is a pressure regulator for the drip system that's going to be connected to the 2,000 gallon aquarium. Clearly, I'm not going to be doing a massive amount of water changes on that, and a drip system is going to allow me to space them out a lot more. All I have to do is turn the valve here and water can begin to come out. More on that when we set it up. Last Sunday, we also talked about installing the viewing panels here. Well, now they both are, but more on that in a minute. We also talked about how we're going to be installing these Ecotech MP60s. Now, this is a pretty strong magnet. However, it's not strong enough to go through 8 inches of 5,000 PSI concrete that's reinforced with rebar. It is strong enough to go through the 1.5 inch acrylic. However, it's more so rated for 1 inch material. So when it goes on the 1.5 inch, although they'll stick together, it's not very strong and they fall off. So we talked about cutting up some acrylic and putting them in the corners, but you guys all talked about me painting them. And I thought if I paint them, I'm probably going to change my mind on color eventually. Maybe I do want to have them white, or maybe to match the rest of the tank. However, I thought, what if I change my mind on color? Or what if I scratch the paint? It's gonna be really difficult to repair and whatnot. So I went with another alternative. You guys will remember that planted tank build where I used window frosting to frost the back of the background to give it more depth. I went ahead and got the same stuff and simply frosted these. Now, this gives the appearance that it is white, and you can't really see any equipment behind it, but it also is not going to scratch and it's not permanent. So if I change my mind on this, I can simply peel it off as opposed to trying to get the paint off, which is near impossible to do with acrylic unless you scratch it. And to give you a better idea of what this is going to look like, which is kind of going to be difficult to imagine because we have blankets and braces in here that we're going to remove later on in the week. We'll get to that in a second. But to give you an idea, when this goes in the corner here, and it's not going to be balanced very well, but you get the idea. It blends directly in. I'll just go ahead and balance it there randomly. But I want to give you an idea of what this is going to look like. Now when we drop the wave makers in, it's going to look a lot better. Now, as long as we keep the cords away from about 1 inch of the acrylic panel here, you can't see the cords either. With that said, this is actually not even fully enclosed yet, so we're getting a lot of light back there, and some shadows are being created. That won't happen when this is properly installed. When we'll be installing it, we'll talk about in a minute. We also talked about building the filter for the 2,000 gallon aquarium, and now it's completed. Again, more on that in a minute. On Tuesday, we went live and I talked about how I installed one of the panels. In fact, the little side panel here was installed first, and how I did it was actually quite simple. I first took a router and routed off the bottom to give it a beveled edge, just so when that edge comes in contact with the bottom corner of the tank, it's not cutting into it, because you'll remember when we fiberglassed the bottom of the tank's perimeter, that left a bit of a concave, and I wanted to match that with the acrylic as opposed to cutting into it. From there, I sanded the perimeter of the acrylic, all the surfaces that are actually going to touch the tank. Then I sanded the pond armor that is waterproofing the 2,000 gallon tank with a 60 grit sandpaper and a simple palm sander. From there, I laid a large thick bead of silicone along the bottom so that the acrylic panel can sit on top of that, and lined the perimeter of the acrylic itself with a lot of silicone. Then I pushed this into place with some bar clamps as well as some 2x4s and made sure it was extremely snug. I applied the silicone in about 2 or 3 inch zigzag pattern. The reason being is because when I sandwich this with the tank and apply some pressure, those zigzags are going to become one and spread out, and it creates a 4-inch thick seam of silicone on the acrylic. Now that seam creates the structural strength. So from there, I took some more silicone and I created a seal all around the panel. There's no way this thing is going to leak. For example, I used 8 tubes of silicone on this panel alone. We also came inside during that live video and did an update, or a basic tour of the fish inside the house. On Thursday, we unboxed all of those aqua decor backgrounds that you guys can see here. And I was really excited to see your guys' response, even though the camera truly doesn't, capture how realistic these really are. You guys got the general idea. And I went on to mention that every tank in this racking system, being 10 120-gallon tanks, is going to get a 3D background, 4 of which is going to be aqua decor. What I also didn't mention though is that I already have the other 6, so I'll give you an idea of what those look like now. First and foremost, you guys might remember that 8-foot long background that I bought from Universal Rocks. It was 8 feet long, these tanks are 4 feet long, so I decided I'm just gonna cut it right in half, and then I'll have 2 backgrounds extra for these, because that 8-foot long tank is going to be a peninsula tank, and I don't wanna block off one of the sides. I want it viewable from all 3. Cutting it in half wasn't a bad idea, because now I have 2 backgrounds that look somewhat different. They will be the same colors, but the characteristics about them are a lot different. This kind of reminds me, of course, it's rock, but it also kind of looks like a mud bank. So this can be used for a lot of different tanks. I then bought 4 more, including this one here, which is a thin rock background. One thing I do notice about Universal Rocks is that their colors are kind of similar. So while nowhere as near as realistic and as handcrafted as the aqua decor, these are a little bit more affordable, especially if you use a code like I did from Jay Wilson. This one's a gray background. This one is typically used for Malawi cichlids, which I'm probably going to use it for as well. This is probably one of my favorites that came. Here's another type of rocky background. Again, lots of depth to these, and they're kind of made the same as the aqua decors. And then finally, the last one. Now this one is a little bit thinner up top with a little bit of depth, but the bottom here, as you can see, has these rocks jutting out, which would look pretty interesting. I'm not sure what I'll use these for in terms of what fish will go in what, but I do know with all 10 aquariums getting a 3D background, as well as being aquascape beautifully, I think this racking system is going to be absolutely stunning. On Friday, I decided to install the final 8-foot long panel on the 2,000-gallon aquarium, and I would do it live. This panel was installed exactly as the other one was, although I couldn't manhandle it and get it in the tank myself. It had to be picked up and moved into the tank and then slid into place. I got my friend Gary to come over and help me out. Again, it was done identically. But the fun didn't stop there. You see, yesterday being Saturday, I went to my local fish store and we held a bit of a meetup. I did a meet and greet, a Q&A. I was supposed to aquascape an aquarium, but instead I thought, I'll get a couple of kids to do it because it means a lot more to them than it would to me to scape a tank. Also did some raffles, and the store put on some sales. And then of course I checked out all of the fish and got something for myself as well. It's difficult for me to go to a local fish store and not buy something. So although it's been an incredibly busy week, that leads us up to today. What's next? Well, there's not a whole lot more I can do on the 2,000-gallon aquarium besides wait for the initial silicone to cure. On Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to remove the bracing systems and install the corner compartments for the wave makers. I'll also install the lid bracing that's going to go around the perimeter of the aquarium, and I think I might go ahead and do this live on this Tuesday. And while the main filter is now built, basically the shell of it, making it a sump, if you remember, this tank is approximately almost 4 feet long, 12 inches wide, and 30 inches tall, making it about 70 gallons. You see though, I ran into a couple of problems with this tank while building it. You see, originally I was going to use this black acrylic to serve as the baffles. Baffles essentially separate a sump so you can do different things and control how the water flows in each section. But while drilling it, I went ahead and broke it. I only had this panel and another one, and I needed them both to complete the filter. I don't have any more, and it's not worth it to go ahead and buy a full sheet because I only need these two pieces. This in fact was scrap acrylic from a past build. So is all of the acrylic that built that sump. So instead I'm using some scrap 3/4 inch cell cast acrylic, which if I were to go ahead and use this at first, I wouldn't have had to brace the aquarium, but I went ahead and braced it because I was under the impression that I was going to be using those. So now this aquarium is incredibly braced. The bracing system is very simple, just strips of acrylic sitting on top. It's ugly, but it's the cheapest and fastest way to brace an aquarium. And this is just going to be a sump. It's not a display tank, so it doesn't matter. Originally though, I had another idea. I remembered that I had these acrylic tubes. This was for a project that I was going to work on. I've had these for almost a year now, and I forgot all about them. So I thought, what if instead of using baffles, I attach these acrylic tubes to the bulkheads? And believe it or not, these fit exactly around the bulkhead fittings. The bulkheads are 2-inch bulkheads. There's one on each side. I drilled them in with a simple hole saw that you would use on wood. The benefit of working with acrylic is if you have wood tools, a lot of those wood tools can also be used on acrylic. So to give you an idea of what I was looking to do, I drilled 40 10mm holes into this acrylic tube. And it actually fits snugly over that 2-inch bulkhead. You can barely see it because we're all looking at acrylic here, but I figured this would save a lot of space in the tank, and I could just use this as a baffle instead of using the the typical traditional types of baffles that you would see to separate sump compartments. Water can't flow in through the bottom. I'd most likely have to silicone around the bottom to create a seal, so water would have to travel all the way up to the top and flow through the holes I created. And I was really liking that idea. However, I realized that in the long run, this is going to limit me to be more flexible and to make adjustments to the tank if I want to. Ideally, what I want to happen is water to come up through one side, flow through a fluidized chamber, and down through the other side and back to the tank. But I want this to also serve as a really good mechanical filter so it polishes the water, because the canister filter doesn't do a tremendously great job at polishing water. A great biological filter, but not great mechanical. I also want to be able to add heaters to it just in case the in-floor heating is not sufficient enough to raise the temperature, especially during the winters here. So that's where I'm at with it now. I need to make some more adjustments to those baffles, but as soon as that's done, I will cement them in place, and then I can move on to plumbing it. Aquarium plumbing is still at a bit of a standstill until I complete the filter, but we're on schedule to make sure this is all completed when the tank is ready to be filled with water. If I'm not, I can simply close some ball valves down here and water can't flow out. From there, I can continue to work on the filtration system. Now, what about the cure time of these panels compared to these compartments for the wave makers? I'm not going to be using a lot of silicone or nearly as much silicone as I used on the viewing panels, so everything should cure right around the same time. Meaning that potentially next Monday, we will be able to fill this aquarium for the first time. As for the racking system that's going to hold 10 120-gallon tanks and fill this entire wall, I'm told that this should be shipping late next week. And I'll receive it the following week, which is perfect timing because this coming weekend I'll be away in New York for Reefapalooza, which, by the way, they've invited me out and covered the cost. So I'm not putting any money towards this. That will take away from the gallery. However, I do want to take advantage of this opportunity to go to an event like this and get to meet a lot of you guys. So if you're anywhere near the New York area or New Jersey area specifically, check out Reefapalooza this coming weekend. Oh, and one last thing. We've actually been getting some pretty nice weather over the last few days, and because of that, when I'm soaking the driftwood, the water in the container is warming up. The warmer water is allowing the tannins in the driftwood to be removed faster. So I changed the wood in this changed the water, in this about 4 days ago. And as you can see, with the water getting a lot warmer, it's releasing the tannins a lot faster, and that's indicative of the tips you typically get of boiling your driftwood before using it to quicken the release of the tannins. However, I can't boil these. This is just too big. So with the water and the warming up, it's definitely releasing these tannins a lot more, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing because it's going to release more tannins quicker. Bad thing because I was under the impression that maybe we were close to being done with all of these tannins being removed. So it's definitely been one heck of a busy week here, and we did a tremendous amount out here, and I was really excited to give you guys 4 videos this week. I don't know if I could still do 4 videos again this week because I have a lot going on and I'm going away next weekend. However, I will see you guys this coming Tuesday for a live video. I'll see you Thursday for a video, and I'll see you next Sunday for yet another video.